Hello, everyone. I'm Evely. I want to wish you a good viewing and take care of yourself. This story is about a scientist. Are you ready? Here we go. Samantha Thorn had always been curious about science. Fresh out of college with a degree in biochemistry, her thirst for knowledge was insatiable. She received an unexpected email one cold, rainy afternoon. The subject line read, "An opportunity to change the future." Intrigued, she opened it to find an invitation to a cutting-edge genetics lab known as GeneSys, located in the secluded mountains of Vermont. The email promised funding for her own research and an opportunity to participate in an exclusive experiment with groundbreaking genetic engineering technology. The only catch: she had to agree to be a test subject. Desperate for funding and excited about the prospect of working with state-of-the-art equipment, Samantha agreed. Within a week, she was flown to the GeneSys compound, a sprawling facility hidden deep within a mist-shrouded forest. Its sterile halls gleamed under fluorescent lights, and the air carried a faint chemical tang. Dr. Felix Moreau, the lead geneticist, greeted her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was tall, gaunt, and his voice was smooth, like oil poured over glass. He introduced her to the rest of the team and walked her through the procedure. "We're splicing human DNA with specially modified sequences from other species," he explained. "It's completely safe. You'll be monitored constantly. Think of it as unlocking your body's hidden potential." Samantha hesitated but ultimately signed the contract. The sum they offered was more than generous, and her curiosity outweighed her caution. The procedure began the next morning. Samantha was strapped into a reclining chair while the team prepared the serum. The liquid shimmered an iridescent green under the harsh laboratory lights. "You might experience mild discomfort," Dr. Moreau said as he inserted the needle into her vein. The moment the serum entered her bloodstream, a searing pain shot through her body. It felt as though her veins were on fire, and her vision blurred. She screamed, the sound echoing in the sterile room. Then, darkness swallowed her. When she awoke, she was back in her assigned room. Her body felt heavy, her skin feverish. The mirror on the wall reflected her pale, sweaty face. Her eyes, once a soft hazel, now glowed faintly green in the dim light, and the days that followed, Samantha's body began to change. At first, it was subtle. Her senses sharpened. She could hear the faint hum of the electrical wiring in the walls and see details in the dark that she'd never noticed before. Her muscles grew stronger, her reflexes faster. But then the changes became more pronounced. Her skin developed a strange texture, almost scaly under certain light. Her nails thickened, curving slightly into claws. She began losing chunks of hair, revealing patches of tough, grayish skin beneath. She reported these changes to Dr. Moreau, but he seemed unfazed. "All within expected parameters," he said, jotting notes on his clipboard. "Your body is adapting. This is progress." That night, Samantha's dreams turned dark. She saw herself running through a dense forest, her elongated limbs carrying her with unnatural speed. She caught a glimpse of her reflection in a pool of water. A monstrous, reptilian face stared back at her. The changes accelerated. Samantha's jaw ached as her teeth sharpened into points. Her spine contorted, making her posture hunched. Her voice deepened, taking on a guttural tone. The team began limiting her contact with others, citing safety concerns. Her isolation grew unbearable. Samantha's room was locked from the outside, and her meals were delivered through a small hatch. Her only company was the incessant whispering she swore she could hear in the vents. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but the whispers grew louder, forming words she couldn't quite understand. One night, she pressed her ear against the vent and heard a voice distinctly say, "Join us." Panic set in. Samantha confronted Dr. Moreau during their next session. "What's happening to me?" she demanded, her claws digging into the metal armrests of the chair. "You're evolving," he replied calmly. "You're becoming something greater." "Becoming what?" she screamed. He didn't answer, but the smile on his face made her blood run cold. That night, Samantha decided to escape. She used her newfound strength to rip the door off its hinges and sprinted down the empty halls. Alarms blared, and red lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow as she fled. She passed rooms filled with other test subjects. Some banged on the glass, their faces twisted into grotesque shapes. Half human, half something else. Others lay lifeless, their bodies contorted in unnatural ways. Samantha burst out of the facility and into the forest. The cold air stung her skin, but she didn't stop running. Her heightened senses picked up the sound of pursuit. Heavy boots crunching through the underbrush and the low growls of something inhuman. Her body moved with terrifying speed, leaping over fallen trees and dodging branches. But the further she ran, the more her surroundings felt alien. The forest seemed alive, the trees whispering secrets she couldn't understand. She stumbled into a clearing and fell to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. When she looked up, she saw shapes emerging from the shadows. Creatures that looked like her, their bodies twisted and monstrous, their glowing eyes filled with a mix of hunger and recognition. "Welcome," one of them hissed. The creatures surrounded her, their movements synchronized, almost hypnotic. They led her deeper into the forest, to a massive underground cavern. The walls pulsed with a strange, organic glow, and the air was thick with an acrid, metallic scent. At the center of the cavern was a pulsating mass of flesh and tendrils, its surface writhing as if alive. The creatures bowed before it, and Samantha felt an overwhelming compulsion to do the same. Her mind screamed in protest, but her body betrayed her, sinking to the ground. The whispers returned, louder this time, filling her head with promises of power and belonging. Samantha's body underwent its final transformation in the cavern. Her humanity slipped away as the pulsating mass extended a tendril toward her, wrapping around her torso. Pain unlike anything she'd ever felt coursed through her, and she screamed until her voice became an inhuman roar. When it was over, she stood taller, her limbs elongated and sinewy. Her skin was completely scaled, and her glowing eyes held no trace of the woman she once was. The other creatures surrounded her, their hisses and growls forming a haunting chorus. She was no longer Samantha Thorn. She was something else entirely. Months later, GeneSys reported the failure of their experiment and the unfortunate loss of their test subject. The facility was abandoned, left to rot in the heart of the forest. But travelers in the area spoke of strange sightings, creatures lurking in the shadows, their glowing eyes watching from the darkness. And sometimes, on the wind, a guttural whisper could be heard, "Join us." The whispers spread beyond the forest. Nearby villages reported livestock disappearing, strange claw marks on trees, and eerie howls during the night. Hunters ventured into the woods but never returned, their screams echoing briefly before silence reclaimed the air. Samantha, now fully part of the Hive, led excursions into the world beyond the forest. Her body was no longer her own, but her mind retained fragments of the woman she once was. These fragments grew fainter as the Hive's collective consciousness overtook her completely. Yet, deep within her, a faint spark of resistance flickered. One night, she encountered a young girl near the forest's edge. The girl's wide eyes reflected the terror Samantha once felt herself. Samantha hesitated, her claws poised to strike, but something in the girl's trembling voice, a cry for her mother, triggered a memory she couldn't suppress. For a fleeting moment, Samantha's glowing eyes softened, and she turned away, disappearing into the shadows. The Hive's whispers berated her, but she couldn't explain her defiance. Back at GeneSys, a hidden faction of scientists continued the experiments, undeterred by the facility's closure. Dr. Moreau had vanished, but his research notes hinted at greater ambitions, a larger Hive, one that could infiltrate cities and reshape humanity itself. Rumors of strange experiments reached investigative journalists, prompting a group to infiltrate the abandoned facility. What they found shocked the world. Rows of containment chambers filled with suspended, partially transformed test subjects. Some were still alive, their eyes pleading for release. When the journalists tried to expose the truth, they were met with swift retaliation. Shadowy figures silenced them, ensuring the Hive's existence remained a secret. For now, Samantha's transformation reached its pinnacle. She could now control parts of the hive, sending creatures on missions, defending their territory, and expanding their influence. The whispers became her voice, and she began recruiting more humans into their ranks. The forest grew darker, its boundaries extending as the hive consumed everything in its path. Villages were abandoned, roads overgrown. Yet, a resistance began to form, a group of survivors who knew the truth and were determined to end the hive's spread. Among them was Claire, Samantha's younger sister, who had been searching for her ever since she disappeared. Armed with knowledge, technology, and a burning desire to save what was left of her sister, Claire prepared to enter the forest and face the hive. Claire ventured into the forest with her team of resistance fighters. Armed with experimental weaponry designed to disrupt the hive's communication network, they planned a daring assault on the cavern rumored to house the hive's core. Each step deeper into the forest felt heavier, the oppressive atmosphere pressing down on them. They encountered horrific remnants of the hive's expansion. Carcasses of animals fused with alien growths, trees twisted into grotesque shapes, and the haunting echoes of whispers urging them to turn back. Claire clutched a worn photograph of Samantha, her last tether to hope. "I'm coming for you," she whispered, though doubt gnawed at her resolve. When they reached the cavern, the sight stopped them cold. The pulsating mass at the cavern's heart had grown, its tendrils spreading across the walls and floor like a grotesque cancer. Hive creatures guarded the core, their glowing eyes fixed on the intruders. Claire saw her sister among them. Samantha stood taller than the others, her monstrous form radiating an air of command. For a moment, their eyes met, and Claire swore she saw a flicker of recognition. "Samantha!" Claire shouted, stepping forward despite her team's protests. "It's me, Claire. Please, remember who you are." The hive's whispers surged, louder than ever, but Samantha hesitated. Her claws twitched, and her head tilted as if struggling to break free from an unseen chain. The other creatures hissed and advanced, but Samantha raised a hand, stopping them. Claire took another step, her voice trembling. "You're stronger than this. Fight it. Come back to me." Samantha let out a guttural growl, her body trembling with conflict. The hive's whispers screamed in her mind, demanding obedience. She clutched her head, the internal war tearing her apart as Claire reached for her sister. The hive's core reacted violently. Tendrils lashed out, striking members of the resistance team and dragging them toward the pulsating mass. Screams filled the cavern as the team fought to resist. Samantha turned toward the core, her monstrous face contorted with rage. For the first time, she roared in defiance, severing the tendrils with her claws. The hive retaliated, its whispers becoming deafening. Samantha staggered, blood oozing from cracks in her scaly skin. "Claire," Samantha rasped, her voice a distorted echo of its former self. "You have to destroy it. Use the disruptor." Claire hesitated. "What about you?" "There's no saving me," Samantha said, her glowing eyes softening. "Just end this." With tears streaming down her face, Claire activated the disruptor. A piercing hum filled the air as the device unleashed a wave of energy, targeting the hive's neural network. The core writhed, its tendrils flailing in agony. Samantha let out a final roar, launching herself at the core. Her claws tore into its surface, and the hive screamed, a sound that seemed to shake the very earth. Tendrils engulfed Samantha, pulling her into the pulsating mass as it collapsed inward. The disruptor's energy reached its peak, and the cavern erupted in a blinding flash of light. When Claire awoke, the cavern was silent. The hive's core was gone, reduced to smoldering ash. The remaining resistance fighters helped her to her feet, their faces etched with grief and exhaustion. The forest seemed to breathe again, its oppressive darkness lifting. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, a sound Claire hadn't heard in years. But the victory felt hollow. Claire stood at the edge of the cavern, clutching the photograph of her sister. "You saved us," she whispered. "I'll never forget you." When Claire awoke, the cavern was silent. The hive's core was gone, reduced to smoldering ash. The remaining resistance fighters helped her to her feet, their faces etched with grief and exhaustion. The forest seemed to breathe again, its oppressive darkness lifting. Birds chirped faintly in the distance, a sound Claire hadn't heard in years. But the victory felt hollow. Claire stood at the edge of the cavern, clutching the photograph of her sister. "You saved us," she whispered. "I'll never forget you." Thank you for watching, have a great day, and most importantly, stay tuned. We will meet in the next video.